Shout out to Checkmate Biatch. He says, Apes, I did my space calls today and specifically spoke about Adam Aaron's tweet from January 15th, 2022. In my opinion, this was the first sign of him telling us, we got this. We will moon in fall, and those that doubt will be jackass forever. Now, I figured this is the perfect way to start off the video with a tinfoil hat theory that says this. Adam Aaron's tweet says, quote unquote, I shudder to imagine reaction. And what did Pixar just tweet out today? Well, I see a moon in the fall, and shout out to Guardian10082, he's calling his shot again. The tinfoil hat theory is that Adam Aaron's saying, we will moon this fall, and those who don't believe, you're a pure jackass. Yo, what is going on, guys? Stocks here. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the channel if you're new. 70% of people aren't subscribed. That's all I ask out of this video. In today's video, we will be going over a bunch of pieces of news and then leading into the charts with AMC, the SPY, and GameStop. So take a step back, grab a drink, grab a snack, because we do have a lot of important stuff to go over, and a lot of impact is on way for the end of the week and next week especially. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so BlackRock headquarters in New York has been breached by a mob of people with pitchforks. I've said this once too many times and tweeted at the SEC saying that if the market structure doesn't get fixed, I'm not telling you I'm inciting a riot, but there will be riots. And since you want to play with street, we will bring it to the street. Just in, JP Morgan Chase quietly settles whistleblower case involving charges of keeping 2 sets of books and improper payments to Tony Blair. Now, this was a lawsuit that should have made the front page headlines in every major newspaper in America and on the evening television news. Instead, as we predicted, it was quietly settled on Monday, just 10 days before a business trial was supposed to begin. Again, this is the same type of article that exposed all of Citadel's lawsuits and fines and their manipulation of markets, spoofing, etc., which was, I believe, over 7 or 9 fines throughout the years. And overall, JP Morgan, BlackRock, Citadel, all of these entities would like to keep things under the rug, especially the way the market is moving right now. Everything has speculation. Now, speaking of JP Morgan, they say, quote unquote, a macro pivot is already underway after contracting in 1H22 US GDP is projected to have a 3% jump last quarter, an upgrade of 2% points from our forecast just 6 weeks ago, a trend-like pace of growth this quarter on a path to soft landing. Speaking of that, GDP drops Thursday AM, which is tomorrow from when you're watching this video, so get ready for volatile markets. Again, the market is in a slight pump right now, but we'll get into that later. Touching on that topic also, the US Federal Reserve will go for its 4th consecutive 75 basis point interest rate hike on November 2nd, which is my birthday. Love you guys. According to economists polled by Reuters, who said the central bank should not pause until inflation falls to around half its current level. We talked about this in the video yesterday, how there's one side saying this and one side saying another, and in my opinion, they're trying to make us think that the market is ready to rally back up and that inflation is about to drop, and it's not as bad as we think, but I personally am not going to fall for that. Now let's touch on some banks. Bank of America says that we continue to think it will be relatively easy to get inflation down from 8% or so to 4% or so. However, getting close to 2% will require a recession. Now, Bank of America is the same people who stated hundreds of thousands of jobs will be lost, inflation will be terrible, we will be in a recession, yada yada yada. And you will see throughout the video that everybody's perspective who talked bad are just somehow just switching from a dime the same day. Just in, U.S. company stock buybacks are on pace to reach $1.25 trillion this year, a new record. And Atlanta GDP now estimate is 3.1%, which was previously 2.9%. Bank of Canada raises key interest rate by 50 basis points, less than expected 75 basis point hike. Everybody is talking about this. The Bank of Canada pretty much came out and said, yo, we're going to slow down the hikes of inflation. We don't think it's that bad. And what this is going to do is pump markets around, but in my opinion, it is just essentially going to make it worse for them all in all. Remember when Europe decided that, yeah, we're looking bad, but we're going to print more money for the economy? I think Bank of Canada is kind of putting themselves in the same position, however, not as bad. They're just trying to temporarily save the market and liquidity crisis, in my opinion. What are you guys' thoughts in the comments down below? Now, crypto markets have seen the largest short liquidations in 15 months per CoinDesk. Speaking of crypto, venture capital crypto investments dropped by 66% in Q3, and US bankruptcy judge dealt to blow to Celsius Network stockholders, ruling against their notion to form an official committee of equity holders. Just in, the Bank of Japan has increased the amount of bonds it was planning to buy in the day's operations, affirming its commitment to defend its ultra-low interest rate policy amid a recent surge in yields. While we're talking about Japan, Japan's finance minister says we will always take action against excessive moves. Now, before we get into the second half of the video, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Moomoo. Moomoo is a fantastic platform that is allowing me to give you personally 15 free stocks when you hit the link, sign up, and deposit $1. Each one of these stocks can be valued up to $2,000. Now, if you've traded stocks before, you've probably got this promotion on platforms like Webull or Robinhood, and you know that not all the time it's up to $2,000. However, when they were letting me give away 10 free stocks, I had some family members do it, and they made a little over $70, some over $40, some even over $100. So it is free money, and if you enjoy the thought of passive income or free money, it takes 5 minutes to do so. The link will be pinned in the top of comments and linked in the description. Let's get back to the video. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken: we are not at war with China, but we are steadfast in defending our interests. UK's PM Sunak is considering postponing next week's planned fiscal statement. Remember when China delayed their GDP announcement? Even though it was good somehow? Fidelity Investments said it still plans to hire more than 16,000 people this year and is offering some workers full college tuition as an incentive. Guys, I want to hear your thoughts on Fidelity because I've recently opened a brokerage account with them and I've had problems with the phone number issue and I've had to call them back and forth. However, their response team is very well so far, in my opinion. My issue did not get resolved. It's on a time frame, a time limit sort of thing, which is perfectly fine, but I want to know your thoughts on Fidelity down below. Is it a great platform to invest a lot of money? Bed Bath & Beyond reported an increase of 1.6 million members of their loyalty program in 2 months, 8 million members today compared to 6.4 million members at the end of August 2022. Speaking of that, Bed Bath & Beyond authorized a new 150 million at the market offering. Germany to legalize cannabis use for recreational purposes. Hopefully YouTube does not demonetize that. But touching on this, Germany will permit adults to purchase and possess up to 30 grams of cannabis for recreational use. Now, the reason I'm putting this in the video is because Germany is one of the first international places to actually go forth of legalizing cannabis. Apple has put more ads in the iPhone App Store, which is not surprising. And it's also not surprising if they miss earnings, if other companies miss earnings, because Google came out with earnings yesterday. They missed on earnings per share and revenue, and they went out saying like YouTube ad is down, all this ad stuff is down. Google is just not doing that good. And if you don't know, Google does own YouTube. So again, I would assume that would correlate to Apple and Meta and other platforms like that. But India's antitrust regulator has fined Google 9.4 billion rupees, 113 million, for abusing its dominant position on its Android mobile app store. Speaking of app stores, I figured we'd throw this in, and speaking of Google and Apple. China State Bank sold dollars to support yuan yesterday. RTRS bought stocks. Now get ready for Microsoft to dump, not financial advice, but Cramer says he expects Microsoft shares to jump after earnings. I don't know why Jim Cramer does this to himself. Microsoft literally just came out and said weak economy impacted PCs and spending and LinkedIn. So what makes Jim Cramer come out and say that they are going to go up amongst earnings when them themselves are saying, yo, weak economy impacted all of this stuff around our company, yada yada yada? He is just absolutely nuts. But now let's get into AMC, GameStop, the SPY, the charts, and close out the video. And if you haven't yet, hit the like. Alright, so I wanted to point a couple things out. First of all, AMC, 100,000 shares viral on Stonko Tracker. I don't really look at Stonko Tracker anymore because it's a bunch of bullshit, and you know that they siphon out these shares and they're doing some sort of suppression technique, yada yada yada, loopholes. But I wanted to come down and point out the cost to borrow fee at about 18%, which is not that significant, but what I really wanted to point out is the options chain and then the short exempts and how it correlates to the chart. So the options chain is showing a lot of calls compared to puts in the money and out of the money. 16,000 in the money compared to puts, 6,000 in the money. Out of the money options, 92,000 compared to 25,000 out of the money. So either market makers or retail are playing this, but you know that based off of the algorithms right now, it is a point of interest. It is supposed to run up, and that is where we are tracking on the cycle, which is really significant as to what short sellers and market makers are doing. And it seems like they're not playing amongst the algos, right? Because in a sense, they could be playing calls, right? That's why the options chain is a little bit bloated. But in a sense, short sellers are stacking on short exempts. You see 303,000. You haven't saw this until the 17th of October. 303,000 right on this point of interest. Now you will will see right on this time frame, we had a decent green day, coming from $6.30 up to about $7, so a 70% green day, and they stacked on short exempts. Now, if I bring the drawings in right here, you will see that hedge funds, algorithms, etc., see this as a point of interest in where algorithms will boost the stock. So what they had to do to prevent retail from pushing volume in, pushing FOMO in, kind of causing a gamma ramp, right, whether they're working with market makers or not, is to suppress the price once more with short exempts. But they had to do it at the right time, and it seems like they mastered the perfect time to do so. However, I do think short exempts will be stacked today, as we're just slightly green with the market slightly green. Not only that, but the cycle shows a couple more days of heavy green. Right, so it seems like they mastered whatever they're doing to suppress the stock price, of course, and that is what I wanted to point out on AMC real quick. Now, we can see two things with AMC, right? So take a look at this section right here. From this section until we ran to $70, we played out 3 cycles and then got the major move. Following this, we played out 1 cycle before a dip, and now we're playing out 1, 2, coming up on this 3rd cycle again. So if we were to see the same thing, if algorithms were supposed to push this, you could see that rise right now, end of year, end of 2023. Now again, it doesn't have to be the same, but if you see a little bit of a propped up before coming back down, you could see that secondary rip with volume kicking in. Otherwise, you will just see the cycle play out the same way it's playing out. You see it here, here, with a little bit of a move one way or the other, potentially getting rejected on the overall trend line. Now, before we get into GameStop in the SPY chart, the short interest of AMC is 104 million shares of free float, which is 20.25%, and the days to cover are 4 days. Now, before we touch on the S&P 500, I want to give this message out to you guys so you can really implant it into your head. Shout out to Market Hustle. Go follow him on Twitter. The best investors view stock market crashes as a Black Friday sale event, not something to run away from. And I'm bringing this up because it is significant with the S&P 500. You see, if the S&P 500 bottomed out and you were late to invest, don't think that you were too late. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you look historically at previous crashes, right 01 to 05, you will see that down 20%, you would have caught it here, and you would have rode it back up before, of course, the crash of 08, which you can't predict. If you caught it at down 20%, you would have caught it right here, rode it all the way up to here, this little correction down 20%, caught it, rode it up to COVID, and then eventually just rode it back up. And the reason I keep mapping out the 20% is because where the SPY is trading at today, not the bottom, it just hit, but where it's trading at today from the peak, it is still down 20%. This is not a late time to invest into the market, whether you time the bottom or whether you didn't, right? If you invest now and it drops and you didn't time the bottom, it is still going to come back up over the future. This is just where all of the money is stored, and without this, the stock market would just do terribly bad. Again, not financial advice. It is just not a bad idea to invest. Now, speaking of AMC, I wanted to talk about GameStop. I said AMC had 2 routes to take, and GameStop has the same as well. The first route is seeing something like this where essentially the cycle would play out. It does not have to be to this degree, right? This could be shrunk way down, and eventually it will just play out to this degree, but this would be followed by a sell-off if we were just playing out another cycle. However, if we were going to go through that 3-cycle period, 1 cycle sell-off, 3-cycle period, rip sort of thing that we talked about on AMC, GameStop would see something that happened when it ran up to $500. With that being said, GameStop tapped a low, which you see in the cycle. It would still curl back up a little bit, probably just hitting the next resistance at $30.70 before selling back down, tapping this trend line, and getting a rip once again, which would be in December. So there's 2 options here. Let me know in the comments what you think will happen. Will the volume pick up? Also, one more touch on AMC in the cycle period. In case you guys are playing calls or puts on AMC, playing options in general, you will see that the IV is not terrible and that the call volume is 81,000 while the put volume is 29,000. So again, calls are trumping the puts, but be very careful with this. But in my opinion, even looking at the implied volatility, which can give you a very good idea of how you want to trade your options, there is a lot more room for upside than downside. Hopefully you guys taken something out of this video that was of value to you, or you just enjoyed watching. If 70% of my viewers who weren't subscribed actually subscribed, we would be well over 10K subs, so just please do that. And also get your 15 free stocks down below so I don't have to tell you again. I love you all. Other Stocks out.